Good day, friends. I hope you're doing really well. And in this series this week, we are going to talk a little bit about what do we do? What do we do? How do we feel? How do we regulate ourselves? What do we do and not do with our food in response to when, not if, people make comments about your food and body? So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tracy Brown, and I'm a trauma-informed nutrition therapist, and my team and I provide one-on-one and some group counseling to help people be their own food and nutrition experts and feel safer in their bodies. So I don't know anybody who hasn't experienced this, where let me just talk about, I'll go BR, before recovery. Most people have experienced when you were really little, any age you've experienced in your life, where either around people and they're talking to each other or cross talking, or maybe they're talking about you. And this could be in you as a kid, where negative comments were made about people's on TV's bodies or your body or just other people's or themselves. And so that level of human functioning, unfortunately, because if that's all we ever see and that's all we ever know, we get programmed to think that it's okay to speak about other people in that way, that it's appropriate small talk conversation. And the reality is we've never been taught that, like, no, that's really inappropriate. In fact, it really is a boundary violation for sure. But we don't know that when we're younger, or even, maybe you're watching this and you're 80 years old and you're like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. If that's new for you, that is true. And it's not your fault that maybe that had never dawned on you, that it would feel bad if that person you're talking to, whether it's a celebrity or a relative that's being talked about behind their back, that would feel bad to them. That would feel like a misattunement, a rejection. And they wouldn't feel safe. They wouldn't feel safe to be around those people who are doing the talking, whether it's directly about their bodies or insinuating something, or maybe not even about them, but because they match some of those characteristics. It's human to wonder if they think that about them, maybe they think that about me. Okay, so that's the basis of where we're going to grow today, is recognizing that's the environment pretty much everybody's been raised in, okay? And that we see go on all the time. You can't even watch a baseball game that's not about bodies, just about baseball, without at least one body comment about some person, either the announcers criticizing themselves or a ball player. It's like, it's hard to get away from, because it's just so ingrained. But the point of this conversation, it's not if this happens to you in your recovery process, it's just when. And I actually teach my clients, it's like, there are going to be triggers, and we're trying to help you be less triggerable, but first we have to know them. And then secondly, we have to realize, again, this is going to be a much longer video that I've talked about, but it's not necessarily about you. Okay. Even though it really feels like you, and it's the way this works, it actually is programmed to suppress, there's a level of groupthink that makes some people feel safe, but we all know it feels like a very, very suppressive way to live. All right. So what do we do? The first step is recognizing that you might have to mentally take, I'll call it extreme action. I know for me that when I was not restricting anymore, not doing shenanigans with exercise, I recognized my body was going to change because of that. And I had to allow myself to, this makes sense. And even if other people are able to do those same behaviors that I used to do, that doesn't mean that I can do it without dire consequences. Maybe it'll kill me, but if it doesn't kill me, it will totally rob me of my life, the life that I was meant to live, and not this life of, well, maybe if I have the right body, then I won't get criticized kind of stuff, either behind my back or, around me. I had to accept that maybe I'm going to have to tolerate some of that. And I hate to say that, but there's a level of people get convicted of this behavior And at some point in your life, they do. And oftentimes they just don't learn the lesson. And some people hear it from us or other sources and they recognize, yeah, that doesn't feel good to know that if I said that, that might hurt somebody. You know, some people eventually wake up to that. Or if you say it about ourselves, it definitely hurts you. So number one is recognizing that like we're the environment we're in, the system, I don't want to say culture because I've heard this from like all kinds of cultures all over the world. So it's not necessarily only a Western culture thing. I've heard it a lot of places. But anyway, we have to recognize that there are going to be people who just say stuff and it almost feels like they're just pushed into your life at that very moment when you're trying to move forward to say something inappropriate. So recognize that people do, allowance of breaking people's boundaries has just been a thing that people have been doing forever. And it's not right. It's not fair. It's not okay. And can we recognize that there's a fallen human condition thing happening, okay? And that's not necessarily about you, okay? Even though it really feels that way. And sometimes it is meant to attack you. That's another talking point here. Number two is maybe deciding to go on this journey. I know that we coach our clients a lot on this. Is going on this journey of learning how to not be offended. It's a big ask, I know. To like, people might say things directly about me that maybe aren't even meant to hurt me. And maybe they want to hurt me. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just like that. It's just such an autonomic response that they're triggered to do. And somebody is eating whatever they want. Somebody is not actively trying to lose weight. Or maybe you're going from a weight suppressed state to letting yourself gain weight. Not because you're out of control. You know the truth, but they don't know your journey and they don't know the truth of physiologically what happens when you stop restricting and having chaotic eating and over-exercise or whatever it is you're doing, that the body's going to have to adjust, right? And getting to the place where you're not offended, that they don't know better. Even though we want them to and they should, they don't, right? And and that takes that's a whole journey. That's a lot of really looking at the cost of staying in that fight, flight, freeze, or please all the time that brings on that offense. I mean, people have been hurt. I've been hurt. Everybody watching this has been hurt. And recognizing that like, okay, I can stay resentful, bitter, afraid of people, always afraid of what people think. I can, like, once I recognize I am doing those things and how they impact me, it takes some time to recognize those things happen and I want to be in my window, even if I'm hurt. And that's part of growing your window. People think sometimes that doing all this nervous system health work is going to have you this peaceful, connected, joyful life all the time. That's actually not how it is. It helps us have more capacity to deal when things are hard and aren't even fair. And how do we seek the appropriate safe people for support? How do we have resiliency? How do we reframe? How do we see the bigger picture? We can only do those things in our window of tolerance. Okay. And thirdly, what I want to say is that like people are going to say stupid things like, oh, wow, like don't go too far in your recovery or whatever stupidity happened out of people's mouths. And we know that's projection. We know that's they're being triggered. We know that we don't want to take it personally, even though it's a journey to learn how to not to do that. The last thing is that like what we want to like kind of draw a line in the sand. The last thing I want to do is judge myself. The last thing I want to do is undereat or overreach for food just because someone doesn't know how to be appropriate. That's the last thing we want to do. So we want to really hold on to like, even if people aren't okay with me not towing the line, basically, and keeping a boundary of speaking up when things need to be spoken up for, when you grow your capacity to do that, and actually just corrected people lovingly. No, it's really hard to connect with you when you talk about food and bodies in that negative fashion. hard for me to connect with you when you speak like that. Learning how to do that will give you a lot of oomph to like hold the line towards like, they're going to say things, they might be thinking things, but I'm going to enjoy this food anyway. Those kind of things. So I know this was a little bit longer video than I typically do, so I appreciate everybody coming live. Thank you so much for being here with me this morning. And if you have any questions about this, I'm talking about some difficult stuff, and none of these things I expect anybody to be able to do completely today. These are part of the growth things that help us have not just a sort of kind of recovery, but I always got to watch what people say, and always afraid of people. We want people to have enough like this internal locus of control. It's like, I know who I am, even when people say things that are 100% not true, or maybe there's a speck of truth to it, but it's delivered in such an inappropriate way that it's like, I don't have to digest that. All right. So thank you all so much for watching. I would love to hear from you all in the comments below if you have any circumstances where you've had to navigate this, do this, deal with this, where it went well, what would share that. If you had a time where it's like, man, I really wanted to say something and I couldn't, I'm happy to help you here, kind of like, verbally here, role play a little bit. Some how are we gonna navigate this? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. Here are some maybe talking points you can play with. And it doesn't always mean for other people. It's also for you, because we do have these internalized probably habits as well. And we're trying to